What is up, world? Welcome to the live feed on Blueprint Auto Services. I'm going to post this in the IGTV section so it can be viewed at a later time. I know some people still got to work, or some people just not interested. But so the n54 is right here. It's off the stand. If you haven't been watching, I'm just going to update you real quick. The timing is set. The cam sensors are in. The spark plugs have been gapped and they are installed, and we're moving right along. So today I'm going to be talking about fuel injectors. There are some car enthusiasts that are used to like their Hondas or like their old school engines or whatever, but nowadays more and more I see manufacturers switching over to direct injection, especially or most certainly on a turbocharged application. So what is direct injection? What is port injection? Blah, blah, blah. So typically you'll have the intake manifold over here, and usually there's a fuel rail mounted on the intake manifold where the fuel injectors sit and they spray gas into the intake ports. However, on this engine, it came equipped with a direct injection fuel system. All that means is that the fuel injectors spray gasoline directly into the cylinder rather than in the intake port. So the reason or mythology behind that is that they can create a cleaner fuel ignition or burn or whatever the case is, because they can control the fuel more precisely. Not only does that increase the gas mileage, it also reduces the emissions because there's less gas being wasted. Now, here's the problem. Because they're spraying directly into the combustion chamber, they have to deal with greater pressures. So this is why this fuel injector is rated to spray up to 3,000 psi versus like 80 psi on a low pump. That's also why you'll see a direct injection fuel system come with two fuel pumps. One fuel pump in the gas tank that's referred to as the low pressure fuel pump. And then you'll have another mechanical pump driven off of the engine. In the n54's case, it's driven off of the timing chain behind the vacuum pump. And it raises that pressure from 80 psi to around 3,000 psi at full throttle. And that's all to just overcome the cylinder pressures. So now we're going to go into more detail about this engine specifically. So the earlier models around 2006, 2007, BMW made the decision to mass produce a turbocharged engine. This is nothing new to them, but it's been decades. I mean, the last turbocharged BMW was a 4-cylinder, and I think like I think the car was called like a 2000 or something like that. But anyways, they had numerous amount of recalls and issues with the fueling system. So this was like their first time using this fuel system. If you've seen all the other BMWs prior to that date, like the E46s, E36s, E30s, they all had port injection. But one of the issues were the fuel injectors themselves. They had issues with gasoline leaking out of the injector, and what would happen is that extra gasoline will seep past the piston rings and saturate the engine oil with gasoline. So what that does is it actually dilutes the engine oil, so it changes the viscosity. And if anybody knows, you can use gasoline to clean oil pretty well. So it's actually like a detergent. So what happens is you're stripping away the properties of the oil, and the first thing to go are the rod bearings. So a lack of lubrication and an increased amount of detergents causes a bearing failure. So they started revising these fuel injectors. In front of me, I have the latest revision up to date. So this is index 12. The revisions go based on index. So initially, when the first motor came out, it was index 1. So that means they went through 12 revisions before they finally found something that was reliable. So because I'm increasing the boost on this motor and I'm going to use it for a performance application, I decided to pick up the latest revision. So if you look at the serial number, you'll find some information. So the last digits on the top row refer to the index. So that's how you know what index injectors you have. And then over here, these 6 numbers is another important set right below the QR code. These 6 numbers represent the calibration, or sort of like the flow rate or something like that. So when you replace your injectors, you actually have to go into the computer's ECU and enter these numbers so that way the computer can sync up the calibration. So this is why I have this little card handy. I labeled it cylinder 1 through 6. So as you can see, I started writing down the serial numbers. 58012. That's this guy. So I'm going to put this one in cylinder 1. So later when I install the motor in the car, I can refer to this card because it's going to be hard to see the numbers with everything on top of the engine. And I can program or code the ECU. Another thing to note is that, let's say you was doing this and you were replacing an injector, or you were rebuilding your motor and you were reusing the same injectors. You would have to replace the Teflon seals. Right now you can't see it because there's this shield covering it, because these injectors are brand new from the dealership. So when you buy them, you just pull off that cover and you just drop them in right away. However, if you were using the old injectors, you would need something like this. First of all, the Teflon seal, you would have to replace it. And this tool allows you to remove the seal. And then you would have your seals themselves, right? So you would put on the new seal and you would think, all right, cool, I just put on the new seal and then drop them in. But no, you can't do that because the orifice where the injector sits inside of this well is so precisely tight that it won't allow it to seat properly. So you would need something like this. There are a series of dies. So there's 3 different size holes, right? And what you would do is you would take the injector with the new O-ring, you'll stick it in the first die. It will shrink that seal just a little bit. And then you will move on to the smaller die and it'll shrink it some more. And then you will move on to the last die and it will shrink it to that final dimension. And then you'll hold it in there for a while. And then as soon as you remove it, you would drop it inside of its resting position. So it's pretty crazy, like how they design this stuff. And then you would have to install the mounting bracket. But there's also this decoupling seal that you need to replace. So I already went ahead and installed one on here. As you can see it has like 3 latches that lock into a groove. So that's pretty simple to install. I'm going to show you real quick if I can hold the phone. All you got to do is, with the clips facing up, just slide it up there until it locks into place. It's very important if you reuse your old injectors that you replace these coupler rings and the O-ring. All right, the next thing to take note of is they call this the hold down device. That's what BMW calls it. So if you look at it straight on, you see it has a curvature. You turn it this way, you turn it that way. It's important you install it the right way because this is a spring-loaded device that basically locks the injectors in place. You use one hold down device for every 2 injectors, so you got a total of 3. So basically, because I already bought these brand new, I don't need to replace the seals. All I gotta do is take this guy off, stick it in there, stick the other one in there because you gotta do 2 before you drop the bracket on, and then you gotta tighten the bolt. This bolt is steel, so it's reusable. So I'm reusing actually these 2 parts here. And then we gotta torque it. The torque spec is funny. Let me show you something real quick. Alright, so here's the fuel injector, nozzles, and lines tightening torque specs. So if we scroll down to what they refer to as hold down device, cylinder, 2-cylinder head, right? N54T. It's an M7, 20 millimeters long. And then you see the spec, 13 Newton meters plus 2. So because it's like a spring-loaded piece of metal, I guess they want you to tighten it to 13 Newton meters. And then once it's tight, then you're going to tighten it to 15 Newton meters, if that makes sense. Alright, so since you guys here are watching, I'm going to try to install the first 2. And, oh yeah, another thing to take note of. My engine is already super duper clean because the head has been at the machine shop. But let's say you're replacing an injector and your car has been running or whatever. I find it that a lot of debris gets built up in here, even with that cover on for some reason. There might be leaves, there might be dirt or oil or whatever the case is. I suggest you vacuum all that crap out of there before you remove the old injector. And you get a rag and wipe out this hole so that it's pretty clean. In my case, I don't got to worry about that. So let's move on. Try to get this phone propped up for you guys real quick. Alright, so I got my chart. I'm just making sure I got the right one so I don't mix them up. 580 212. So what I'm gonna do is slide this guy off. Damn, this thing is tight. How they expect you to take this off? Oh man. Alright, hold up. Okay, it's coming loose. You just gotta probably twist it a little bit. That thing is tight as hell. My bad, guys. Probably gonna need like a pliers or something. I didn't think it was gonna be this tight. No, it's coming out. Alright. Drop this in there right away. Alright, it went down. We're gonna go for the next one. Just double check. 576206. And there's a tab, so you got to make sure you turn it the right way. All the electrical connectors should be facing the back. Man, this trunk is tight as hell. Bro, come on, like, You guys probably laughing at me. I gotta find the pliers, cause this thing ain't wanna cut your hand up. Alright, so I'm gonna end the live. You guys get the basic idea. If you missed any of this video, it's gonna be down in the IGTV section. Peace.